Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another election prediction. This time we're doing the 2024 Republican primary. So a lot of things have changed. DeSantis's campaign is just plummeting. He's continuing to go down and more down in the polls as more people get to know him because, again, he's just gone way too right wing that he's losing a lot of these moderate Republicans that are now going towards Tim Scott or even Donald Trump at this point. Trump's attacks on DeSantis are pretty much working. Vivek Ramaswamy is overtaking DeSantis in some polls, even, which I don't know if Vivek Ramaswamy will actually get second. I really doubt it at this point. But let's just get into the first few states and the Republican primary schedule. It's currently Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, Michigan, the caucus. They want to do a caucus here because, again, uh, the primary for it to be that early, apparently it's like with the RNC, you can't do it that early, specifically on Michigan. It has to be a caucus, and they're probably going to put it on March 2nd or so. And DC, it's allowed to slightly be before Super Tuesday. But again, let's get right into this. So for the state of Iowa, because it's a very divided field right now, Trump will probably win the Iowa caucus here by like 42% at this point. Tim Scott, I think he'll do a lot better than he is right now. Right now he's at 10%. I think he finishes like right behind DeSantis even. I think they like tie for the delegates. I think DeSantis just does a couple percentage points better than him, while Vivek actually gets probably like fourth or something. Chris Christie, I could see him just getting down to 5%, and same with Nikki Haley. And I honestly think, just because of name recognition, that Mike Pence finishes a little bit behind Vivek Ramaswamy here. It's a proportional caucus, but Trump gets most of the delegates here, and Tim Scott finishes in a strong third place, giving him some momentum. So for the state of New Hampshire, again, I just, based off the polling here, we could take a look at New Hampshire right now. Right now, Tim Scott, he's pretty much in like fourth right now, but Chris Christie, he's tied for second to DeSantis sometimes, or he's just right in striking distance of him. Burgum's doing a lot better than expected here, but I think he's just not enough of a major candidate to really make that big of a splash, which is why I didn't even include him in the chart yet. But again, with New Hampshire, I honestly think Chris Christie's going to beat out DeSantis here. I think he's going to take second away from him, surprisingly. So Chris Christie, again, finally he gets a big win in New Hampshire for second place, but still, Trump will win this state, probably with a bit lower of a percentage here. I think he underperforms a tiny bit in New Hampshire's Republican primary. Chris Christie probably gets 18% of the vote. DeSantis gets 13%, while Tim Scott probably finishes around with two delegates. Vivek probably gets down to that placement. Each of them just kind of split a single delegate here. And this last delegate, we'll give it to Chris Christie here. So again, Republican primary, it's still an extremely divided field. I think Mike Pence at this point, he gets such miserable finishes in he had a decent finish in Iowa, but not such much of a good performance in New Hampshire. At this point, I think we might see Nikki Haley drop out, and I could see her endorsing Tim Scott here, giving him some more momentum. But we're going into Nevada right now. I totally think Nikki Haley would endorse Tim Scott here because they're, again, from the same state as South Carolina. She's a lot more of a more moderate type of Republican, and she would rather back him instead because he's actually doing a lot better than she would. So we're going into Nevada assuming that Nikki Haley endorses Tim Scott because, again, when a candidate performs that badly in the first two states, they're going to drop out. And we'll probably see Doug Burgum probably drop out as well. I don't think he would stick around for the long run. But for Nevada, again, I think DeSantis is going to get third here. I think Tim Scott would probably finish in second here, surprisingly, with a lot of momentum going his way. We could look at the Nevada polls. Let's take a look. Right now, I'm pretty sure that Trump's, of course, quite in the lead here. Recently, he's just up by 50%. But again, these are kind of old polls. I think it'll be around 40-ish because, again, the candidates, Mike Pence, he's only at 2. Tim Scott's only at 2. Again, Tim Scott's actually got a lot of momentum going his way, and I think he's probably going to be the one that finishes second here. So he'll probably outpace DeSantis here. Trump will probably get like 44, 48% or so of the vote, probably down to 44% because, again, as they get to know the other candidates, Vivek, gets a decent percentage here. Chris Christie, again, he's not performing the best here. Mike Pence probably down by there. Honestly, at this point, I think Chris Christie would kind of narrowly outperform Mike Pence. Mike Pence would drop out at this point, endorse Tim Scott. I mean, honestly, probably would see Chris Christie drop out at this point and probably endorse Tim Scott as well in a last-minute push to get a victory in South Carolina. Now, this is where all these endorsements are key for Tim Scott. I'm assuming they're endorsing him because out of the candidates left of Trump, DeSantis, Tim Scott, and Vivek, Tim Scott's the most moderate Republican on the stage here. So DeSantis, he's pretty much lost momentum at this point. Trump, he's around 43%, sometimes even in the low 40s here. I honestly think that they'll all drop and endorse Tim Scott. DeSantis might even decide to do that at this point as well, but I'm going to assume he probably stays in the race. But let's do the other guys down here. They're probably going to get low single digits again. They're kind of non-factors. Except for DeSantis, I could see him getting like 12%. But again, believe it or not, I think Tim Scott would actually narrowly pull off a narrow victory here against Trump, assuming those endorsements go his way. Because the candidates, when they perform badly, they're going to drop out and endorse somebody. They got a deal, and I think Tim Scott would be willing to make deals with them to put them in his like administration or something like that. So Tim Scott finishes off with a victory in South Carolina, only because Nikki Haley endorsed him, Chris Christie endorsed him, and Mike Pence endorsed him. Assuming that they do, I honestly think they would. Seeing their poll numbers are that low and they just perform that badly, they're going to definitely endorse him. So this will give Tim Scott quite a bunch of momentum. DeSantis might actually just drop out at this point. I could see Vivek dropping out as well. I could honestly see Vivek endorsing Trump, hoping to get the VP slot. DeSantis could make a deal with Tim Scott, give me VP and I'll endorse you. I could see that occurring as well. Or DeSantis just endorses nobody, but I think he'll endorse somebody. But we're going on to Super Tuesday. So Vermont is a winner take most state. I could see it actually narrowly going for Tim Scott here, just because he's a more moderate type of Republican when compared to Trump here. So again, we're seeing some momentum going towards Tim Scott. So it's a two-candidate race, I'm assuming. Massachusetts, this is a very Trumpy state. I think this probably goes to Donald Trump at this point. Maine as well. Tim Scott could have a chance here, but again, it's a really rural state. It's not like Vermont, which has so many moderate Republicans, especially Phil Scott, the governor here. He's a very moderate Republican. Tim Scott would do decent in Maine, I would believe. In Virginia, North Carolina, these are Tim Scott victories, I think. I think you'd get a narrow win here with a Glenn Youngkin endorsement. Could also probably narrowly win in North Carolina. It would probably come down to just a couple thousand votes or so. But Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma, these states probably still all go towards Donald Trump. Again, they're not going to go to a more moderate type of Republican like Tim Scott, but he'll still get some delegates out of the states, but they'll probably mostly go towards Trump at this point. Okay. Well, let me do the Tim Scott. I actually want to take a look at North Carolina's polling. I'm kind of doubting my call to give it towards Tim Scott at this point. Let's take a look. So Trump's only like 44%. Again, Survey USA, they're the only ones that are really showing him at the 50s or so. Trump's not up by a lot here. Honestly, I could see Tim Scott actually winning it still. I'm standing by that call. I still think Tim Scott gets a win here. And I think I forgot to do the other primary states here. So Michigan, Idaho, D.C. I'm doubting that they actually stay in the schedule. Usually they just do the first four or so, but we'll make sure to do those states as well. So we'll just do them at the same time as Super Tuesday. Again, it's winner take most state in Michigan. So again, Trump will probably easily win there. Idaho, it's a winner take most state. I honestly think because it's a caucus and the Mormon vote, I think they probably go with Tim Scott. DC probably also ends up going towards Tim Scott, and that's winner take all, luckily for him. Okay, let's get on with the rest of the few states. So Minnesota, it's winner take all state. Trump will probably get all the delegates there. Texas, it's winner take most. Again, Trump will probably get most of the delegates against Tim Scott. Colorado and Utah, these are the most promising states for a moderate Republican and Tim Scott. I think Tim Scott would probably narrowly win out in Colorado. He'd probably win by a decent margin. Utah, he would definitely get a pretty big win. I think you'd get a lot of the delegates here. But bad news for him is California. It's winner take all. And in a two-candidate race, only one candidate could get to 50%. And I think that's going to be Trump. And if you get 50% statewide in the state of California, that's only bad news for just Tim Scott here. So again, Trump gets most of the delegates there. Alaska, it's one of those other states I could see also narrowly going for Tim Scott. But again, it's a very rural state. So I think it would honestly be quite Trumpy here. Again, there isn't Democrats voting in the Republican primary here. It's mostly Republicans, so Tim Scott won't be able to rely on them to give himself a victory. So Trump probably ends up winning this state, even though it would be pretty favorable towards Tim Scott. Let's see if I covered all the Super Tuesday states. I'm just checking my list out. Texas, Tennessee, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Maine, Colorado, California, Alaska, Alabama. Yeah, we covered all of those. So now we're going to the territories again with Guam. Guam's delegate selection. I could see them actually probably narrowly breaking for Tim Scott here. Let's see. Kansas is up next. It's a caucus. But again, it's a very rural state. I think that still goes towards Donald Trump here. Let's see what's next. Northern Mariana Islands, but that's proportional. And again, the territories kind of really favor Trump as long as it isn't delegate selection. And the next one is Puerto Rico, winner take most. Latinos are kind of mostly behind Donald Trump, so I think he would get most of the delegates there against Tim Scott. Well, Tim Scott's performed pretty decent so far, but let's keep going through the rest of these states. So Hawaii, Mississippi, Missouri, Washington. Again, Hawaii, it's a proportional state. It's Tim Scott's best chance of getting some delegates, but I just think the party would be a little bit more unified behind Trump here. Oh yeah, Georgia also votes on this date as well, I'm pretty sure. Let me go ahead and check. Yeah, they would vote with Mississippi and Washington. So Georgia's a winner-take-all state. Tim Scott would really need a win here, and I think he would probably get it in this state. It's bordering South Carolina. He would probably do well in this strip of states right here. In Mississippi, again, it's winner-take-most, and again, I think most of the party would be pretty much unified behind Trump here. Missouri would probably go to Trump as well. He'd probably do pretty good here. Let's see the next few states here. In Washington, that's a proportional state. I think that would probably end up going towards Donald Trump, I would say. So for now, I'd probably rank that in favor of him, but it's proportional state. It'd be a bit closer or so. And then we're up to the Arizona, Florida, Illinois, and Ohio. This is make or break for Tim Scott here. He has to win a state here, and I just don't think it's going to happen. I think most of the party would be unified with Trump here, and he would probably get 100% of the delegates. At this point, I think Tim Scott would probably drop out the race. There really isn't a possible path for him to win here. So let me just start filling out the rest of the states in favor of Trump. He would probably sweep the rest of the delegates remaining and get a huge Trump landslide pretty much at this point. Tim Scott would do quite decent. He would probably get second place, but still not enough to beat Donald Trump here. So Trump wins the nomination against Tim Scott, who gets second place. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you all in the next video.